Welcome to Wholesale Hotline, where we cover everything to do with wholesale real estate. I'm Jamil Damji.
I'm Brent Daniels.
And I am Pace Morby.
And together we cover the most important parts of wholesale real estate.
Lead generation.
Conversion of sellers into contracts.
And dispositions. Guys, remember when you're watching this show, do us a favor and squad up in the comments.
Make sure that you are liking and subscribing to the YouTube channels and in the Facebook group Wholesale Hotline.
Most important, we want to know we're doing a great job for you and helping you build your business. So go give us a review on iTunes and or Spotify.
So squad up and enjoy the show! What up,
Jamil?
But dude, is that you know? Okay. Your outfits, like when those Halloween costumes.
Oh, the ones that you buy. That's like
that like they come in that little bag.
Yeah,
I think that one would just be called Puerto Rico.
Yeah. It's my Puerto Rican vibe.
It's your Puerto Rico. You look great, dude. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah, we just spent the weekend up in Rincon, the west side of the island. We rented a house right on the water, took all the kids, and had a great time. It was fun.
Beautiful. Wholesale Hotline 215. I'm in Canada, man, here with Charisma for a few more days, and then I'll be heading back to Phoenix and then to Vegas and Orlando for Squad Up Summit. Super, super excited. I'm so fripping pumped that you're going to be there, dude. It's going to be an incredible few days.
Hope we have time to hang out a little bit.
I'm sure we will.
You might be running around, but
I'll be running around a little bit. But I've already heard that all of the iguanas in Orlando have left.
They're hiding. Yeah,
they know that you're they know that you're coming to town, and they're like, nope,
I'm out of here.
Yep. Guys, we're super excited about today. Pace will be here in about 10-15 minutes. He's making his way to the studio, I believe. And Jerry is joining us from Puerto Rico, and Brent is traveling back from Augusta, Georgia, where he was doing rich people stuff, watching other rich people hit balls into holes. But we are here today, Jerry Norton and I, and we are going to be talking about valuing property. Yes, one of the most important aspects of your wholesale business career will be learning how to comp like a pro. Jerry Norton, if you would, tell us your thoughts on the importance of comping and how has it, being good at, because you're one of the best in the business, if not, I'd say you and I are tied for first. You are an incredible comper. How important has it been for your business?
Yeah, and I'm glad you say that because you and I put out a lot of content talking about comping, showing how to comp, doing it live, all the things, because it is one of those skills where I tell people it's there's a lot of it that's a science and there's some of it that's an art. And you really have to learn both. And if you're new, the good news is learn the scientific approaches, and you can learn that fairly quickly. There's some rules we try to follow. But then with practice and with experience, you're going to pick up some nuances. And there's some of it that's a little bit of an art form that just takes time, just takes practice. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. It's like anything, the more you do it, and if you do it day in and day out consistently, then you'll learn little things over time and you'll just get better and better. And it'll become second nature at some point in time.
How fast can you comp a property these days, Jerry?
Well, this is a great question because I think the problem a lot of people have is they overanalyze or they spend too much time analyzing at the inappropriate time. So everything's timing in this business. And so initially when I look at a property, I want to get to a value in 30 seconds, 60 seconds. Sometimes it literally takes me that long. Now that's not it's not 100% value doing 60 seconds, but it gives me a really good idea of where I'm at. And at the beginning, I just need to kind of ballpark the general idea of where value is in this particular neighborhood, right? Whatever neighborhood we're looking at. And so in the beginning, when you're first looking at a property, you don't really want to be spending a lot of time. You're only going to be able to get through a certain amount of properties if you're spending a half an hour, 45 minutes. I see people spending an hour just to try to get to a value to then reduce to a price and then make an offer just to have the offer rejected.
Yep. So like you essentially gave away almost a quarter of your day, if depending on how long you're working, a quarter to an eighth of your day, comping one house for an hour. Like, guys, here, understand the brevity of what Jerry just said, right? You're overanalyzing these deals. You're taking way too long to do it. You're not putting in the reps prior to doing it so that you get really good and really fast at this. And that's just slowing you down. And if you comp a house only to find out that they're not even going to even come close to your price, you've just wasted all of that time. So, Jerry, I'd love to give some practical application. Yeah. I have developed the appraisal rules, which you have discussed on your channel before. Bobby, if you would, can you throw those on the screen? I want to quickly go over them, and you and I can go through them together, Jerry. And if there's anything you want to add to this, we'll make a new version. But I developed the appraisal rules after having interviewed over 100 appraisers to come up with a generalized list of parameters that an appraiser will use when they're comping properties. I think Bobby will have that up here in a moment. But what are some of the rules that you follow, Jerry?
I mean, there's some big ones that everybody should be aware of, and that is location. So you want to be in a similar neighborhood, right? And some things people do that get themselves in trouble is they have a rule of like a mile or half a mile. And while that might be okay, I try not to leave the neighborhood. And if I don't have a neighborhood, I try not to cross major roads. That'll keep me safe because now I'm looking at properties that are similar because they're in the general, neighborhood, right? So I try to pay attention to neighborhood. I try to pay attention to the features, similarities and features, meaning square foot, beds, baths, basements, garages, all those things, year built, lot size. There's a number of things that are the features of the property and amenities. And while you can't get that exact, right? Like not all properties are exactly identical. You definitely want to have some parameters so that you're looking at properties that are similar. So like you don't look at a 2,000 square foot 2-story and compare it to 1,000 square foot single story, right? It's a totally different house.
Right.
So, and there's a lot of nuance to markets. Like people miss a lot of nuance, meaning like in Metro Detroit, a brick house has a lot more value than a frame house or house, right? A basement versus a slab, a garage versus no garage, a pool in Arizona, a pool versus no pool, air conditioning versus no air conditioning. Like some of these things make a big difference. A house built in 1905 versus, 2005.
Right.
So similarities is kind of another one. And that's broad, but I'm just kind of generalizing. And then age, right? Or how old is the comp? And that can also get you into trouble a little bit too, where, am I looking at something that's a year old or a day old, And so I call all of this relevancy. I'm always looking for relevancy. How do I look at properties that are relevant to the subject property as much as I possibly can? And the more relevant, the more valuable that data, and the less relevant, obviously, the less valuable that data.
Absolutely, man. I couldn't have said it better myself. Here is the parameters that I've put together from
this is fantastic.
from those interviews with the appraisers. And these are new for 2024, guys. And, the market changes all the time. And so you've got to be really careful about making sure that you're staying ahead of the curve with respect to how appraisals are going. I'm sure, Jerry, you're seeing right now that appraisals are they're coming in a little bit low. They're not using specific dates of closes, right? And so typically I don't like to use a comp older than 180 days. How far back are you going right now?
Yeah, 3 to 6 months. I mean, if I can get enough data that's 3 months old, I'll take that all day long. Sometimes I got to push out the 6 months. But yeah, I'm with you there. You really don't want to be going past 6 months right now, I think is safe.
I agree. Now, one of the things that I do want to note is we are in a market right now that's trending slightly upwards, right? I mean, we, of course, buyer activity has recently come down substantially, I'd say over the last 30 days, compared to the beginning of the year. January, February, March were super robust. People were excited about the Fed threatening to lower rates. But we haven't seen it yet. And mortgage rates are, jumped up again to like near 8%. And so there's a lot of fix and flip buyers right now that are kind of like, they want to buy, but they want to buy value. They want to make sure that they're getting a good deal, because these things could take time, right? These, you could be holding your property on the market for 6 months if rates don't come down and buyer activity continues to slow up. You're going to have to hold that property longer, which means it's going to cost you more money to hold that house, which means that you've got to bake in more profit margin. So I agree, Jerry, not going back farther than 180 days. Now, because we have been trending up to the right, if you had to go back a little bit, I would still be okay with it, but I would not be using anything from 2022. What are your thoughts on using a comp from 2022?
No, I mean, as of this point, as of this time, yeah, I mean, you're pushing there now, because where are we? Almost middle of April, hitting May soon. So yeah, that'd be probably pushing the 6-month-old comp.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, one thing I do, Jamil, and maybe you'll talk about this a little bit, is I am putting some weight on actives, less for value, more for understanding competition and days on market.
Yep.
And doing adjustments if necessary.
Yes.
That's what your buyers are doing. If you're a flipper and you're like, man, I see where your ARV is, I see the data, that makes sense, but there's 8 flips on the market that are sitting 90 days old. I don't want to be competing with those. So then they're going to do some adjustment based on the active competition.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. So what Jerry said also, let's add to the actives, look at pendings, guys, because pendings are telling you where the market is trending. It's a great rhyme. Pending is where the market is trending. Active is where the market sits currently. Now, here's another thing. Just to highlight again, the thing that he said, the days on market is really important. Jerry, if you have a high day on market, what is that telling you?
That's telling you the market does not like that house. It's not reacting to it in a positive way, meaning it's pending, right? So days on market is market feedback. That's the market telling that seller, hey, we don't like this property and it's sitting. That's what the market's telling you when it's sitting there 90 days old and longer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you get 30 days on market and things are moving, what does that tell you about the market?
Market's hot, stuff's moving.
Yep.
Or that property was desirable. I like to call it market desirability. You want to be, when you're farming for leads too, you want to be looking at market desirability, right? Am I in a good market? Is this a type of property that buyers are going to want? Is it attractive? Like, so that way, when this thing comes in front of a cash buyer, if you're wholesaling, they're going to want that property because it checks all the boxes.
Absolutely. Now, I want to say something about those properties, because straight out of Compin, hundreds of you guys come and watch that show with me on Wednesdays and on Sundays. Thank you guys for tuning in and learning. And people will bring a property to be comped, and there's like nothing around that property. It's rural, or the closest sale was like in 2022. So first, what does that tell you about the market, right? That tells you that there's not a lot of activity going on in that market. It tells you that there's not a ton of investor activity if we can't find relevant comps. Jerry, what do you say to people when they're, spending hours or days toiling over a house that's got nothing around it to verify value?
Well, remember, guys, no comps are the same as bad comps.
Yes,
right?
sir.
I mean, if you don't have data, now you're guessing. And we don't want to guess. I mean, we're not in the business of guessing. That's what's great about a wholesale business is if we follow certain rules, it's fairly predictable. So keep it predictable. If you're looking at a deal and you just cannot establish value because you don't have good data, meaning you have a lot of sold comps that can help you feel really confident in the number, then you got 2 options. Either go ridiculously low to give yourself tons of buffer room, or get the heck out of that market because you're just going to struggle. It's going to be a market where even if you got a great deal and you take that to market, you take that to dispo, you're just going to be pounding your head against the wall trying to get that thing moved because your buyers are going to be looking at the same thing you're looking at, no data, and they're not going to know how to value it either. So you
totally agree.
Doing is digging yourself a grave.
I agree. And wasting time. You're wasting a tremendous amount
know
of
what
time.
You know what I think it is, Jamil?
Yeah.
Because I do similar things like what you're doing, and I tell people, look, don't make this a stump Jamil show where you're going to bring me some whacked out property and expect me to pull a rabbit out of the hat and give you some solution. Like, there's a reason why it's not selling. There's a reason why nobody else bought it. There's a reason why it's in the middle of nowhere and it's never going to sell, right? Like, use some good judgment. Be in an area where you've got a high probability of success because there's a lot going on.
100%. 100%. And again, at the end of the day, guys, your buyers are paying attention to activity, right? So if you're seeing yourself sitting there like, oh, I just can't figure this out. What do you think your buyer? Okay, let me put you into the mind of what your buyer is doing in the middle of the day. Okay, he's whipping around town. He's looking at material. He's checking on job sites, or she's checking on job sites. They're coordinating with trades. They're negotiating prices. They're getting deals sent to them while they're driving. They're quickly comping. If this person's not able to find the comp, do you think you're going to get a call? Do you think that they're going to sit there and be like, well, hold on a second. If I really open up Privy and look everywhere for it, and I peek behind this, no, it's just not going to happen. It's either like obvious or it's not, right? And we make money where things are obvious. We don't make money where you have to tell a story. That's another thing that I hear all the time. When somebody wants to talk to me about a deal, this is what they say. They send me a deal, I comp it really quick, the price is whacked out, and they say, but hold on a second, let me tell you the story. I don't care. Nobody is going to care about the story. Like, here's what happens when you wholesale a property. No one's like, okay, hold on a second. I'll pay you $10,000 assignment fee, but you better make this story good. I need character development. I need a good climax. I need an act 1, 2, and 3. And don't you dare leave me without a cliffhanger. Don't you dare
either.
Right? Nobody cares. Nobody wants to hear the story about this property. It's just not going to make sense for them, right? Hold on. Put them back, guys. We're not done with the appraisal rules. So this is going to take us a minute to go through because I want to go through and open up all of this. Now, Jerry, if you had to use a comp from 2022, how much would you be adjusting down?
Yeah, I think I like some of your rules. You want to give that a discount, probably 10%, 20% down. And the further older it gets, devalue that, but even devaluing it, the problem here is if it's 1 out of 6, okay. If you have 5 out of 6 comps and they're all 9 months, 12 months old, you got a problem again.
Yes.
Right? Because you're going to take that to a buyer. And what's a buyer going to say? Your comps are old. I need to see new comps. Or they're going to pull up new comps and they're going to be like, dude, your old comps aren't relevant. There's newer comps. The problem, Jamil, is people want to cherry pick their favorite comps and ignore the relevancy.
Ooh, okay. So somebody asked, what does it mean when he says, and another person asked, is this 2022 or 22? Guys, what I was talking about was the market height of 2022. 2023 trended in the same direction. Okay. Once we corrected after 2022, I'd say in the beginning parts of 23, we were finished our correction and the market started trending in the same direction. And it's been going in that direction since. So I feel confident that we can use somewhat older comps, at least dating back to the beginning of the 23, just as an indication, not to verify, but as an indication. But if your the only comp is from 2022, you got to make the adjustment down. So when I talk about time traveling and leaving a subdivision, here's what I'm talking about. Okay. Right now, because the market is so volatile, because we're seeing buyer activity spike, buyer activity drop, buyer activity spike. Like, we're seeing this happen in real time. What's going to happen is like Jerry just said, you're going to want to cherry pick the best comp. But what if it's an older comp? What if there's a newer comp that popped up that shows that your property's ARV went down 40 grand? But you want to stick to this older comp because you're like, well, it's within 6 months. Yeah, but the new comp that just closed yesterday, okay, is not verifying that, right? So what I say by leaving a subdivision right now, appraisers will actually go out a half a mile instead of time traveling, instead of going back in time to find the comp, they'll go out a little bit farther from the subdivision to get something that's more time specific. Jerry, have you seen a lot of this going on as well?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I prefer not to leave the neighborhood, but what you're saying is if you have to choose,
Yep.
better to go out of the neighborhood a little bit than go older in comps. Is
Correct.
What you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not Jamil making that up. That's the appraisal guidelines that they're following.
Correct.
Which means if that's what they're doing to establish value, that's what we do to establish value.
Now, the caveat to that is it's still like for like. So I'm not leaving the subdivision and then going and picking a completely different type of property to say, hey, well, I left the subdivision and here's one. No, it's got to be like for like. So let's talk about like for like, right? We want to typically stay in the same subdivision. Jerry, what's your rule of thumb for feeling or knowing that you're in the same subdivision?
Well, I mean, if it's a newer subdivision, it's very obvious. Like I can look at the map and I can see that, okay, here's where you come into this neighborhood and here's where you leave the neighborhood. And there's 100 homes in here. And okay, that's my neighborhood. If it's an older development, or maybe it's more of a grid-like system, then typically you're going to be looking at your crossroads and you're going to try to stay within crossing major roads. That would be a neighborhood. Some systems will outline the names of the neighborhoods. So it's interesting when you go out east a lot, they'll call it, or like Indianapolis and some of these markets, they name the neighborhoods and the neighborhood has value when you're looking at comps, and in the comment section, they're talking about whatever park subdivision or whatever. Whenever a good agent puts in the comments information about that property, look for a trend because that's telling you there's something going on here. This neighborhood's a big deal. Otherwise, they wouldn't be saying it in the comments, right? So then now I'm thinking, okay, well, is my house in that neighborhood or am I in the next neighborhood over where maybe it's got a lower value? And I'm also looking at, like, I'll give you an example, Jamil, exactly what you just talked about. I was working with a student on a townhouse, and in this development, there were maybe 30 or 40 of them. And there just wasn't good comps in the neighborhood. And so I did exactly what you said. So, okay, well, let's go outside of the townhouse, but we can't go look at single family or some other non-like property. Let's see if we can find another townhouse development that's very similar to this one, similar in style, similar in price point, close by. And we found another one, and it was basically a cookie cutter. And so I felt good about that. I said, okay, well, we can steal some value from here because not much changed. It's across the street. It's about this. It was built about the same time. There's enough going on that's the same. And I would probably dig a little deeper if I was going to buy there if I'm using those comps. But from a quick look, everything kind of matched up the same. So I felt good about it.
Love that. One of the other things that I've done and sometimes you're in the same subdivision, but you have different builders. Okay. So this is for those suburban areas where you've got one type of builder, a Pulte Homes, and then you get a Taylor Morrison or whatever. You get all these different builders, and they have different qualities, right? They've got different quality of construction. So one of the things I like to do is I like to get the satellite view and I look at the color of the roofs. What's the roofing material like? Do they change color? If they're changing color, then that tells me that there might be a change in quality. And what I'll also do then is I'll go to Street View and I'll look at the front elevations and I'll see, are they using higher grade material in this very close by neighborhood or subdivision that's like right beside mine, or maybe it's in the same subdivision, but we have more of the estates in this subdivision versus the non-estates, the more, general housing style tract home, right? So you got to be really careful because that nuance can bone you. And sometimes you'll have, and I see this a lot with newer construction stuff, guys. What'll happen is you'll have a 2005 build and a 2005 build. You'll have 1,700 square feet and you'll have 1,700 square feet. You'll have two-story, you'll have two-story. But one of them will be tract home and one of them will be an estate, luxury. So inside it's got completely different finishes. And so that's also something that you got to take into consideration. The way that I like to think about it is if we want to compare two things, let's just pretend that we're talking about fruit trees, okay? Apples. We want apples to apples, right? But they can't just be the same apple. They got to be the same apple grown in the same orchard from the same tree under the same conditions in the same season. right? That's how you know you've got like for like. So one of the things that I like to do is I look at the front elevation, right? Is the elevation similar? So are we looking at a ranch, a two-story to a two-story, a Tudor to a Tudor, a historic to a historic? Jerry, what have you seen as some nuance for elevation that has changed value dramatically? And sometimes people miss it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely that curb appeal look, right? And the different elevations. Year built, you see a lot of that change quite a bit. So I'll often put in filters that are giving me year built. That way I'm not looking at that newer updated model, because that's going to look a lot different. It's going to feel a lot different. That's going to keep you from looking at stuff that's probably way higher that isn't relevant if you're looking at an older home. I mean, those are some big things. Like I said, in a lot of markets that have brick homes, the brick versus frame are huge. I think I saw that on your list here, siding.
Yep.
You know, like siding is a big deal.
But brick versus, and here's another weird thing about brick and frame, right? So in Florida, brick and frame, big difference, 15% difference. In Michigan, what did you say it was around?
Well, if you're talking 1,000 square foot house, it's a $20,000 to $30,000 price difference.
Okay, so another 15% difference over there. So, but in Arizona, block and frame trade for the same amount of money.
So it's a market thing.
So it's definitely a market thing. Because if I got a block home in Phoenix, Arizona, built in 1950, and I got a frame home in Phoenix, Arizona, built in 1950, there's no differential. So you got to know the market nuance on whether the construction materials make a difference. Now, of course, we know we've left a subdivision if we cross any major roads, right? So don't cross major roads. And I like to compare houses in the same build generation, and appraisers call that plus or minus 10 years.
Yeah.
Right. Jerry, do you see any nuance to that, or are there any exceptions to that?
Well, yeah. So 1960 is a major cutoff year, because that's when in the United States we upgraded the code for like electrical and plumbing, where we went from like galvanized to copper, and we went from like knob and tube to breaker boxes and stuff. So you'll see a lot of buyers that have a 1960 cutoff date. Even some of the big hedge funds, they don't like pre-1960 or pre-19 whatever. It might be 1950 in a certain market, but there's usually this year, and it's between 1940, 1950, 1960, sometime around there, where you see a major transition in housing. And that tends to be a really big date, like a cutoff date, where you want to be careful if you're crossing over that year.
Yeah. So as Jerry just said, it has all to do with the build technology, right? What technology are they using in the construction materials? Now, one of the things that I've noticed is that in the early 1900s and late 1800s, there wasn't a lot of improvement in build technology, right? Because we're talking about the turn of the century. America was just starting to get really developed. And so you can have a house in 1880 and you can compare it to a house from 1920, and they will compare because there wasn't a huge leap in technology. So there's some caveats. Now, another one of those little pieces, and I hope you guys are writing this stuff down because these are jewels for you. Mid-century modern. Mid-century modern can throw so many of you through a loop, because you'll look at a 1950s house and you'll look at a 1950s house, and they'll be in the same subdivision. And they'll both be single story, but one will be considered mid-century modern and one's just going to be considered a ranch. What are some of the details that let you understand or see that we're dealing with a mid-century modern and not just a mid-century home?
Are you talking like 8-inch, 10-inch trim and archways and things like that? Is that what you're referring to?
Yep.
Oh yeah. And those things are a beast to renovate usually. So your cost is a lot higher. You might be worrying about foundation problems. So those are things you want to be careful of, because a lot of buyers, cash buyers and flippers, they don't want to touch those. Or if they do, they're going to put a big budget on them to make sure that they cover their cost.
Yep.
Yeah.
Big time. So, again, guys, plus or minus 10 years, but pay attention to those nuances. Like a 1950 ranch can't be compared to a 1950 mid-century modern style, because the modern style is going to be almost double the expense in renovations. Now, we were talking earlier about the adjustments that you're going to make, because you're not always going to get apples to apples. You're going to get, one house with a extra bedroom or a less bath, or you might have a pool or no pool. Some of these things are ridiculous. The way that the appraisers value, like for instance, a pool. Jerry, I know you build homes, and how much would you say a pool costs these days to install in a home?
Oh,
a regular pool.
Post-COVID, I mean, 40 to 50 grand.
40 to 50 grand. And how much have you seen appraisers give for a value for a pool?
Oh, geez. Way under that.
I've gotten 10. I've gotten 10. Max I've ever gotten for a pool with like a good landscape, like a lot of like back, kind of like a pace pool.
Yeah.
Like they'll give you 25 grand for a pace pool. But let me tell you this, okay? I'm sure, Jerry, what did you pay? What did you spend?
What is that? 150,000 gallon pool? I mean, it's huge.
What did you spend back there? 200 grand?
200 grand.
Yeah. So Jerry spent $200,000 in the backyard of where Pace lives. That
was pre-COVID, so that'd be double that today.
Be double today. But an appraiser would only give you around $25,000 in value for that. So pools, it's diminishing returns. That's why you don't see a lot of builders put pools in these days, because they don't make as much money. They don't actually pencil out ROI wise, right? I've seen appraisers give 10 to 25,000 for a bedroom. Have you seen any discrepancy or any differences there, Jerry?
No, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Bathrooms right. Plus or minus $10,000. So if you have an extra bath, it's worth 10. And it costs around 10 to 12 to install a bath. So that makes sense. A garage, unfortunately, I think garages have such value, especially in extreme climates like Michigan, Arizona. In Arizona, it's hot as balls. In Michigan, it's freezing balls. So if you're in hot as balls or freezing balls, you are definitely going to want a garage because these homes are more popular. But how much have you seen an appraiser give for a garage?
10, same thing, 10, 15.
10K. It's
going to cost you 40 to build one, or 35, 40 to build one,
It's crazy. And a carport, again, in these, extreme temperature markets, plus or minus $5,000, right? So you might be like, hey, my house will sell better if I put a carport out here. But you're going to spend $10,000 installing the carport, and you're only going to get $5,000 in value. But on the flip side of that, you will sell your house a lot faster.
Yeah. And there's some value to that. There's a lot of value to that. The sell faster, meaning if it's got the thing the market wants and there's going to be more, I look at it like this, Jamil. I want a property, or ideally, we do what we do, but ideally the best properties have the largest pool of buyers. So that means it's got all the things buyers are looking for. So if you can check all the boxes, maybe you have to only value it a certain amount, but it's going to move off the shelf quick because there's going to be more buyers that want that type of property.
Now, there's a lot of people getting confused about where you have to make big adjustments, right? And I would say that traffic, commercial proximity to multifamily has a massive impact on the value of your home, especially if busy roads, right?
Busy roads, yeah. Busy roads are the kiss of death, man.
They are. They absolutely are. Now they're less important in property values under 500K. So in that starter home economy, or in that starter home demographic, you will have a more forgiving buyer. Okay. But above 500K, you're not. Now, why do you think that is, Jerry? What do you think it is about, under 500K, they're okay with their cat getting run over, and over 500K, they're not? Like, what do you think that's all about?
I think as you go up in sophistication as a buyer, I think you're more interested in quiet, and less traffic and less noise. And you're less picky when you're, if you're in the middle of your career, maybe you're not home as much. I don't know. I think it might have something to do with that.
Maybe kids too, right? Because if you got young children and you want them to be out in the yard playing, but you're fronting a major, traffic street, and you're like, man, I just don't feel safe with my kid playing outside. And even if your kid knows not to run into the street, what happens if the street runs into your kid, right? And there's all kinds of crazy drivers out there. And so parents just get concerned. They want to make sure that Jerry, you've got 10 of them. When you, especially in a big family, I'm sure traffic and proximity to more people have been something that is just an absolute no-no for you.
It's a big deal. Yeah. For families, for sure. Yeah.
So some of the adjustments that we make for under 500K If you're siding a major road, it's going to give about a $10,000 reduction in value. If you're backing a major road, around $10,000. If you're fronting a major road, about $20,000. But when you go over 500K, those thousands turn to percents. So if you're siding a major road over 500K, you take off 10%, which could be 50K. If you're backing a major road, you take off 15%. And if you're fronting, you take off 20. Have you ever seen it get discounted more than that, Jerry?
I don't think so. That feels about right. Yeah.
Feels right to you?
Yeah,
now,
I like those percentages.
We're in a world where we've got tons of ADUs getting built, right? And people, I see agents marketing this in their listing descriptions all the time. Oh, room for an ADU. And they think just because you got room for an ADU, or just because an ADU would be permissible by the city, that anybody in their right mind would actually build the ADU. Now, of course, ADUs are very good in like markets like Seattle, where you can individually title the ADU, but that's Seattle, right? In Seattle, you can individually title the ADU so that it can be sold off from the main house. So, it's almost like having a condo in your backyard. But where it's not on a different parcel, if it's in the same parcel, I've seen appraisers only give half value for a casita and for basement. And that's assuming the same quality of construction. What have you seen in basements and casitas?
I think the ADU thing is more hype than anything. Like, I see it pushed a lot right now as this hypey thing. But then when I talk to buyers, they're like, yeah, but I'm not going to go drop $100,000 and build this, detached unit behind. You know what I mean? Like, who's really doing that? I think it's way more hype than actual happening, is my take. That's my perception. I don't know if that's true, but I see it pushed quite a bit in like California, because they're just trying to justify price and like, hey, if you do ADU, now all of a sudden it'll cash flow, where it doesn't without the ADU added on there. But then like when I try to dispo those, it's just hard. It's just a hard sell. I just don't see it work all the way very well. And again, part of the problem here, Jamil, and you've pointed this out over and over again, is the appraisers haven't really caught up with inflation, right? They're not really haven't made the adjustments yet. Now, hopefully they will with more time, but I think they're still behind on what it actually costs to do stuff. And it costs a lot to do stuff now compared to even a year or two ago. And so we really have to factor that in. We got to get smarter about what it really costs to build a garage or to do these different things, because it's way more than it ever was.
Way more than it ever was. And lenders love this. Lenders love this because when an appraiser can come in and undervalue a house, that means that the lender has less risk on the loan. And I again, that's like one of the most I think it's like borderline fraud when you have a lender that's selectively choosing an appraiser that typically comes in and under appraises, because the lender wants more security. The lender wants more insulation in their loan. Have you seen that, Jerry? Like a lot of like appraisers get more business when they're super hard, or are there any appraisers that you're like, oh my God, it's this dude, we're screwed?
Yeah, I call it, when I see that, what I really see is the lender who isn't open for business, meaning they don't really want to do a loan. And now they're finding a reason not to without discriminating. And so, because everyone's worried about that, right? So then now they're going to be like, oh, okay, let's bring in a low appraisal to kill the deal. And it's like, why don't you just tell me that you're not interested in doing the loan rather than just, under appraise it and kill the deal anyway. Right. But they don't want to do that. So it's an easy way out for a lot of lenders, I think, is to just bring in a really low appraisal.
Damn. And guys, I mean, look, redlining is something we think is of the past, but it's not. Okay. The lenders have just figured out new ways to redline. Mm-hmm. They figured out new ways to hedge their risk in demographics where they feel that there may be more economic disparity. And I said that as inclusively as I possibly could, but it's a fact. Okay. And it's how the business is done. And so we need to pay attention to that, at least in our business model, because we have to understand, how is this going to affect the value? How is this going to affect the salability? How is this going to affect the future resale value or the desirability of a fix and flipper to come and do a project in here?
Without a doubt, Jamil, in low income markets, your appraisals just get hammered. And it's because lenders don't want to lend in those low income markets. I mean, bottom line, they don't want to lend there. And so those are, you could have the best comps and you'll get these appraisals come back and they're just ridiculously low.
Yeah.
And you're like, why can't you use these comps? Why are you using those comps? And so there's a lot of that's actually happening.
Now, how do you know if a neighborhood might be targeted by a lender for that? Now, here's one thing that I've done. I look at the pre-foreclosure notice of default and the foreclosure rates for specific areas, right? And if there's a heightened instance of pre-foreclosure notice of default in a specific area, that tells the lender it's risky to lend in this area. So let's get our favorite appraiser, that guy, let's go get him to get out there and appraise this thing and give us an extra $50,000 in cushion, because if this borrower doesn't pay the loan or doesn't make their payments and we take this property back, we're not going to be in a bad spot.
Yeah, I mean, one easy thing I do, Jamil, is I just kind of have a price point cutoff where I know, and again, it'll cross over that. But for me, like, I'll take Metro Detroit because it's a great example because you have Detroit right there. When you get in neighborhoods where ARVs are under 100,000, that's a brutal market because for flippers. Now, if you're in that market, just readjust and know that your buyers are going to be buy and hold and target buy and hold type of cash buyers. And so you're going to look at value different. You're going to look at condition different. You're going to look at rehab numbers different.
Right.
But if you're trying to establish ARV and then wholesale to flippers in a under 100,000 ARV market, it's going to be very difficult and you're going to have a lot of challenge.
Yeah. And just, if you're thinking about it in terms of logistics, guys, if somebody's got to flip a house or is going to take a house from you and you're selling it to them for $20,000 and an ARV on it is $100,000. Okay. And you're like, this is an amazing deal, but the renovation is going to be $80,000.
It doesn't pencil.
Right. So why wouldn't someone just go onto the market and buy it ready done for $100,000 and use it as a rental? Why would they want to then buy it from you for 20, pay 80 to fix it, do all that work, take all that risk only for it to be worth what it's worth?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so you've got to look at it from the perspective of, would I do this? Now, how important do you think that is, Jerry, when you're looking at wholesale deals, to have that question in your head? Would I do this?
Yeah, I think the smartest thing that a wholesaler could do would be to do a few flips on their own and start to think like the flipper, like the flipper. Because if you can put yourself in the flipper's shoes and say, would I do this deal? Would I buy this deal? If I had the money, would I rehab and sell this deal? People bring me deals all the time and they're like, this is a great deal. And I'm like, if you were buying this, you would not buy this. This is not a great deal. Right. And so put yourself in those shoes because that's what your buyers are doing. In fact, the best way to learn how to value properties is to talk to your buyers. You will learn so much talking to your buyers. Ask them, well, what value do you give it? Why do you like it? Why don't you like it? What's the problem with my comp? You don't like my comp. Why? Not because you're challenging them, but because you're curious. You want to learn. You want to get better at your craft. I'm constantly a student of the game. Even today, I want to know, like genuinely want to know. Tell me what value you see. Tell me why. What am I missing? So I can get better.
How do you do that, Jerry, because when a buyer doesn't like a deal, right? What do you typically hear from them? You send a deal out to a buyer and they don't like it. What's the response?
They'd say two things, that ARV is wrong or the repairs are more.
Repairs are more, ARV wrong, or they just won't reply.
Yeah. Or just ghost you.
Or just ghost you.
Which is also
right?
feedback. Which is feedback.
Absolutely. No answer is an answer.
Yeah.
Right. And so now you want to get information from them. You want to be asking them a question, but you, as Jerry just said, you don't want to come off like you're trying to force a deal down a buyer's throat or that you're trying to convince somebody of something they don't want to do. Because if they've already decided they don't want to buy this house, I don't care how convincing you are, how many Andy Elliott videos you've watched. You get on the phone and you try to sell this guy a house that they don't want to buy. It's not going to move, right? And and they're going to not like you for the call. So how do you position that?
Here's what I do. I think there's a question you can ask that is extremely valuable. If you say to that buyer, that cash buyer, say, hey, if I could get this to you at the price you need it at, what price would that be?
Yep.
Now, what that's going to do is it's going to draw out if they actually would do the deal, but at a better price, or if it's just a no-go for it doesn't matter what price it is. And that's valuable because if they say, I really don't care what price you get it, I'm not interested. Wow, that you really don't like this property. What is it that you don't like so much? Like, you can ask a follow-up question that will trigger a response. But if they're like, yeah, I mean, I just need to be here and this would be a deal. Okay, help me understand. Why do you need to be there? What am I missing? Where am I off? And what are you looking at that's giving you that data? And I think if not all cash buyers are going to take the time, and they're not all cool, and they're not all going to share, but a lot of them are. Like, they want you to win. They want you to get better. They want you to bring them deals. So if you just ask questions and you're curious, some of them will open up and they'll share with you. And that doesn't mean they're right. That could just mean their opinion. So I don't ever take like one buyer's opinion at face value. But if I'm seeing that again and again, if I talk to 10 cash buyers and they're all saying the same thing, okay, I missed it. I missed something here. That's very valuable feedback now.
Big time, guys. Honestly, I feel like if y'all haven't like made an entire like 2 pages worth of notes so far, you're missing the point. And that's cool. Go back and rewatch this episode if you aren't taking notes, and take notes. Take notes here, because
this is a masterclass right here on comping. Oh my
100%. Jerry, are there any other feedback, or is there anything else that you look for in comping properties that have been missed on the appraisal rules?
Yeah, let me think about that. Good question. I mean, I think we talked about some of the features. We talked about busy roads. That's a huge thing.
When you're looking at types of traffic, I think, I didn't really get into the types of traffic, and, backing a freeway versus backing a major road, 2 completely different things, right?
Yeah.
Freeway is going to have noise, like the noise pollution of a freeway. Even if you've got one of those sound barriers, it's still going to be very, very, very prevalent. You're going to hear that highway. You're going to hear it all night long.
In some markets, the downtown and the nightlife and the happening, that actually is a benefit, right? So like in certain communities, if you can walk to the downtown where all the action is and the restaurants and things, certain markets love that, and your value will go up. Every street you're closer to the action, you'll see value go up. So it goes the other way too. Sometimes when you talk about traffic, I wouldn't really call that traffic. I just call that more location to downtown. And we see that all over. Like, think about in Tempe, if you're close to all that stuff down there, or in Scottsdale, closer you are to some of the restaurants and things, the more the values are. So some of those things make a big deal.
Now, one of the things that I didn't talk about here was land. And Bobby, thank you so much for putting this on the screen. We can look at Jerry's beautiful face again. When we're talking about land, right? Because you're, in my opinion, for those of you guys that don't know what Jerry does in new construction, Jerry builds some of the most incredible homes that you would ever step foot in. You're hands down one of the most greatest luxury builders I've ever seen. Do you do stuff in the lower price points as well?
No, not usually. No, because I think it's economies of scale, right? If you're going to build something, you might as well get a whole lot more for it. And the higher up in price point you go, the more you get in a return. Right. So that's all. I don't want to be I'm more about margin than volume on the building side.
Makes sense. I love new construction in the lower price points just because they're so easy for me to get in and out of. Yeah. Now, I can share with you guys my land assessment. So for instance, right now I'm building in West Phoenix and I'm building in South Phoenix, and I'm selling around $375,000 to $400,000 for my finished product. Wow. Where do you think, let's take a poll in the chat. Where do you think I need to buy my lot at in order for that to make sense to do the project? And then Jerry, I want you to give us an example of one of your luxuries, and then we're going to pose the same question.
Okay.
So what are the parameters of the luxury? What's your exit on and where does the chat think Jerry has to buy his land in order for it to make sense? Your exit's what, 7 million, 5 million?
Yeah. So it used to be 3 to 5 million, and now it's 5 to 7 million. Yeah.
So okay. So for me, guys, I'm doing a project exiting around 375 to 400. What do I have to buy my lot for? And for Jerry, he's exiting 5 to 7 million. What does Jerry have to buy his lot for in order for it to make sense for a builder? And you guys are going to find lots of opportunities like this out there. You just have to know how to speak builder language, right? So I'm seeing a lot of answers here: 50 to 60K, 70 to 70K, 80K. Okay, cool. So you guys are pretty in line. For me to make sense to do a house where I'm going to be exiting 375, 400, I got to be into that lot. If I'm exiting at 375, I got to be into the lot for 75. If I'm exiting at 400, I got to be into it for no more than 100K. So about 25% of my final exit price is where I've got to be for the type of construction that I'm doing. And I'm talking, builder grade, entry level materials, luxury vinyl product on the floor, of course, granite or quartz countertops. But I'm not waterfalling the edges or anything like that, right? So that's where I kind of need to be at. Now for Jerry's project, where he's exiting 5 million to 7 million, some of you guys none of you guys are even coming in with any guesses here. Come on, guys. Oh, so for Jerry, they're saying 75K an acre. I think that's a little low.
Way low.
Yep. Somebody's saying 600 to 700K. Thank you, Joel, for taking a stab at it. Any other guesses here? People are just like, wow, Jerry's so rich. How do I do houses like Jerry?
Rich friends. Just has rich friends.
So, Jerry, someone said 500K. Where do you need to be buying your land at for it to make sense?
So in Paradise Valley,
we got $1.5 million, $1 million here. Okay. So,
yep. So in Paradise Valley, now it's higher now, but pre-COVID, it was $1 million for a 1 acre north-south facing lot in specific streets, right? So everything matters. But for a 1 acre lot, about $1 million was our budget to buy a house that we're selling for 4 to 5.
4 to 5. Okay.
Yeah. So what is that? About 20%.
About 20%. So about 25%. So it goes down a little bit as you get into the deeper luxury, because his material costs are just going to be through the roof. I mean, he's importing his marble from Italy, and so it's going to be more expensive. But then we look at land that's a little bit farther out, right? And people have a difficult time trying to understand where, some of these, I guess they're not rural, but they're more suburbia, touching the boonies of a market. Where do you see those ratios kind of working in, or do you not really play in there, Jerry?
No, I don't. So all I'm doing is spec building, and I'm only doing it in a hot market where there's a lot of demand and there's a lot of spec flipping happening. And I recommend that to others. Like, if you look at your searches right now, when I look at searches to determine if new construction is a smart move, I'm going to put in my minimum year 2022 as of this recording, 2022, because that's going to tell me, okay, what are all the homes that were newly built in the past year or two that have now sold, or if you're looking at actives, they're up for sale. Those are investors, because a homeowner wouldn't build a house and then turn around and sell it, right? That wouldn't make sense. So those are investors. So if I see activity and I see lots of houses selling that are from investors, okay, I'm in a market that's worth playing in. But if I do that search and I don't see any other spec flippers doing deals, then I don't want to be I don't want to be the first one to find out if it works or not.
Right.
There's not really a market for it.
Would you describe what you mean by a spec build?
Yes. So a spec build is someone who buys an infill lot usually. Sometimes there's a house and you tear the house down. That's what most of ours are. It's just an up and coming area. And then you tear that house down, and then you get an architect, you design a house, you hire a builder, you build the house, you stage or furnish the house, and you don't market it for a buyer until you're completely done. Sometimes you pre-market it a little bit, but the goal is you're basically flipping, but new construction without a predetermined buyer. When you have a buyer and you're working for a buyer, that's a custom builder, and we don't want any part of that.
Like, and that's custom brain damage. That's custom brain damage.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. And
You're an employee. Yeah.
even if Jerry has somebody who's like, they see that he's in the middle, he's like, no, when I'm done, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Right. Because they're going to come in and they're going to make every change order possible. You're going to get into arguments. It's going to be, you'd way rather finish your product and then let the market decide how that moves, which makes total sense, right? I wouldn't want to be, building for, specific client either. Now, you mentioned teardown, and I think lots of people make the mistake of valuing raw land and teardown the same. They're not. Yeah. So Jerry, why aren't they the same?
Well, so raw land might need zoning, might need some kind of, you're going to have to get that build ready. Whereas an infill lot, you're going to have to factor in your demo, but it's in an existing location and you're looking at a lot where there's already homes and you just need to get a permit now and build, right? So it's much different than any type of zoning requirement or any type of building requirement where that may take 6 months or so before you can
longer.
Before you can even do anything.
And guys, they are a complete crapshoot, right? So I was involved in a rezoning project. Chris Iman and I bought 4 acres in Arcadia Light, and we, man, I'll tell you, one of the biggest learning lessons for me ever was buying that 4 acres, Jerry. I closed on the 4 acres the date I got married. Okay, I closed on it on March 7th, 2014, right? Okay. And I was so excited about it because we got this 4 acres of land. We paid like 2.6 million for it, right? Wow. Which for 4 acres in Arcadia Light at the time was pretty good. Now, what ended up happening was we had a buyer who was willing to give us $300,000 prior to close and have us assign the deal over. But Chris and I got greedy and we decided that we were going to hold it, rezone it, entitle it, and sell it. Okay. Because we thought that's how we would squeeze every drop of value out of that land. Now, here's what ended up happening. We went to the rezone. The rezone ended up taking a year because we had neighbors contesting the rezoning. They didn't want more density in the area. They didn't like that. We actually had one woman who came to every hearing, and because the rezone was going to add more density, she factored that it was going to take her an extra 7 minutes to get to work every single day. And for that reason, she was contesting it. And we had to do traffic studies to appease that because she kicked up such a stink, right? So guys, rezones are not guaranteed. They are a possibility and they're a big risk. If you're looking at wanting to get into that kind of a project, Jerry, what would you say would be the most efficient way to try to do a land deal of that type?
Yeah, I would say wholesale for a while. And the way that you wholesale land deals, in my opinion, the best way to do it is to reverse engineer the process. So go identify those flippers that are building and selling new construction. You can look right in the history and see what they bought their lot for, where they're buying. So you can already do homework and know a lot about them. Then you can call them up and say, hey, a lot of spec flippers, they like to inventory. I'm one of them. Like right now in Puerto Rico, I'm doing some $5 to $7 million homes. And I want to have about 3 lots in inventory. That way I can roll my guys. I'm working on plans while we're building one, right? So a lot of these spec flippers are always worrying about their next deal, and they'll land bank for 2 years before they even start building on one of these lots. So you can approach them and say, hey, where are you looking? When are you buying? What's your price point? What's your parameters? And now if you've got 20 of those that are spec flipping and their buy box, now you can go find them deals. You can do a door knocking campaign, a mailing campaign, a cold call campaign, and you can find properties that match what they're looking for. They don't want to do that. That's what's so great about wholesaling. It's no different with them. They don't want to do acquisitions. They would gladly buy from you if you brought them a deal that fit their criteria. And it's an awesome niche business because not very many people do it or think about it because it's land, not houses. So it's kind of under the radar. It's a really cool strategy.
Yeah, guys, don't sleep on land wholesaling, even on the outskirts, right? So
Yeah.
what I found for land on the outskirts has been a pretty reliable percentage of new build value. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll look and I'll say, are new homes being built in this area, first and foremost? If the answer to that is yes, then I look at what the average of the new homes are selling for in that area. And I'll say, okay, well, if the average is 500,000, okay, then I would say that I need to have a lot that costs me no more than 10% of that 500,000. So that means that I can pay $50,000 per lot. Now, if I have 5 acres, I want to look at what are these lots being subdivided into. So what size lots, and what is my current zoning, not future or not potential zoning, but what is my current zoning allowing me to subdivide my acreages into. So if I have like R6, I know that I can get 6 lots per acre, which then let me know how much that acre should be worth. And then if I've got 10 of those acres, I can now come up with that math, right? So being in this niche, guys, is really, 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 really lucrative, but you have to know the rules of the game. Because you'll just start making a fool of yourself if you start making offers on people's land and then you start shopping it to builders and the builders are looking at you like you've completely missed the point. Another thing is you can't structure these contracts like you would normal wholesale contracts. Inspection periods are not going to be 10 days. No. Right? And when you're talking about land, what would you say, Jerry, is an average amount of time that you need for an inspection period when you're buying a piece of dirt?
If it's just a lot, we'll still do like a 30-day because I need to call the city. I need to do a lot of stuff. So 30 days is really normal, but we'll also do a lot of options. And options are very common with land. And if you think about it, like when Pulte or a developer goes and buys 100 acres from a farmer, they almost always buy those on options. And they're like a 2-year option. They give them a $100,000 option fee. And now for 2 years, they're doing all their feasibility and they're doing all of their zoning and all of their subdividing and all their stuff. That way they're not out the money. So the farmer's committed for, $10 million, but Pulte doesn't front the money until after it's time to exercise the option. And that allows them to control the property without paying for it yet. And then they go to work. And if they don't exercise the option, which they do sometimes, let's say like the market shifts or whatever, then they'll just lose $100,000 and not do the deal.
Yep.
So for big land deals, options are very common, but even for small deals, like you can do an option all the time. I just made an offer on a lot deal in Denver, and I pitched, it was on market, and I pitched to the agent an option. I said, hey, would the seller consider a 6-month option? And she's like, what? No, why in the world would we do that? I'm like, because it's going to take me every bit of 6 months to just get ready to even build, and I'm going to be out $500,000. So I was trying to coach her on like how a lot of builders want to buy. They don't want to tie up $500,000 on a lot that they can't even do anything for 6 or 9 or 12 months. So a lot of them like to look at options. And so you can get an option and then you can assign your option, and that will be a very attractive deal to a spec flipper.
Absolutely. And guys, if you don't have an option agreement, Bobby, if you could you put a link to, I've got an exclusive and non-exclusive option. Non-exclusive option, guys, is not going to be super secure. That means that you have an option, but your seller has the ability to sell it to somebody else. An exclusive option gives you the exclusive right to purchase the property. And typically you can make your option periods as long as you want, right? So for instance, when Chris Hyman and I sold the 4 acres to D.R. Horton, America's home builder, they optioned it from us, and they gave us a $100,000 option fee in order to do that. Now, what ended up happening was they dragged us out. That I think we were in escrow for a little under 3 years, Jerry. What do you think my total profit margin was once D.R. Horton closed?
Probably not that great.
I made $12.
Oh no!
I made $12. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt service. I mean, I got all that back, but my total profit on that deal was $12, where I could have made $300,000 assigning it right out the gate. So guys, it
Bird in hand.
really matters. It really matters that how you structure these land deals and how you do them. And especially understanding value and rezoning and all of the different timelines. I mean, and the option, if we had known, we would have optioned that land instead of buying it, right?
Yeah.
Closing on that land was the biggest mistake Chris and I could have possibly made on that deal. Just a complete nightmare of a situation.
Yeah.
Now, Jerry, when you're talking about, comping in markets like Puerto Rico, because you're out there, how do you deal with not having access to good comps or not being?
So I'm doing a flip right now, and it's ARV's 825. I ended up buying it for 500. It's a cosmetic flip, so we're going to spend 60 or 70,000. And it's in this little neighborhood. It's in where I live in Palmas right here. And there's a live guard. You go through the gate, right? They put you through the ringer when you want to go in there. And then you're in this little community of cookie cutter houses. Like they're all the same. They're all 2,100 square feet. There's a 2-story version and a single-story version, right? And so when I bought this, there's not like there's an MLS. I can go look at comps or whatever. So I literally had to go up and down the street, and I had to look at, okay, well, this home was renovated. What's going on here? And I had to ask and knock doors, and I was able to find like 3 comps and establish value, right? But like this is the old school way, but we really do the same thing today. We want to stay in the neighborhood. How long ago did homes sell for? I actually got to go into these properties. I knocked on the door, and the seller was cool. I said, hey, I'm thinking about buying the one 2 doors down. Do you mind if I take a look at your house? I just want to understand like what you have versus what I might have. And I looked at their pool, their landscaping. I looked at everything. One of the interesting things, Jamil, and this kind of aligns what we're talking about. We're doing our rehab right now, right? And we're putting in new windows. And so the window guy comes out, and we're talking about different windows. And he says, yeah, this is the window I recommend you go with. And I'm like, wait a second. These are frosted windows, right? Like, how we put in the bathrooms?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, this is what you're going to want. I'm like, no way. Why for like all my windows? And he's like, yeah. And so I was like arguing with him, and he goes like this. He goes, come for a walk with me. And we walk down the sidewalk, and he's like, those are new windows and they're frosted. Those are new windows and they're frosted. And he was right. Like there was one out of the 6 like new updated homes. One of them did not have frosted windows, and the other 5 did. Now, guys, think about this. You're in the home and you're looking out the window and you can't see out. Now light comes in, but you can't see out your front windows, your bedroom windows, all your windows. It's the weirdest thing to me. But guess what? It doesn't matter what I think. It matters what the market does. And that's the point here. If you got to get out of your own head. And I was in my own head. And so after he showed me that, I was like, okay, we're doing frosted windows. And I told my wife, I'm like, hey, honey, we're putting frosted windows in. And she's like, you're what?
she couldn't understand it because you're looking at it like, from the point of view of having lived in America all your whole life. You're like, well, I want to see out of my window. What's a window for?
Right. So I actually asked the neighbors, I'm like, why did you go with frosted windows? And they're like, well, we're on top of each other in here, and you are like, you got 10-foot setbacks to the next house. And they're like, we don't have to do curtains. And my neighbors can't see in my window. I like the privacy. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess when you grow up and it's sunny and you look at the ocean all day long, it's not a big deal, I guess, maybe. Yeah. But like the point though is like, that's the market. And when you comp, you're doing the same thing. What is the market doing? And that's what I need to figure out. Not what I think or what I like or what it should be. None of that matters. Get out of your own way. You're the biggest problem usually when you comp.
Totally agree. I want to get back into the timing of a comp and work through that real quickly with you. But guys, throw your comping questions in the chat. Bobby's going to be picking questions from the chat, putting up on the screen, and then Jerry and I will be answering them for the next 20 minutes while we're still here. But Jerry, right out the gate, what are some of the things that you do to speed up your comping muscle?
Yeah, so there's a few things you can do, but I try to just look at a broad perspective of my neighborhood, and then I like to put in a filter on price per square foot. And I don't know if you play with price per square foot a lot. I love price per square foot because it puts everything on the same spectrum, right? Like you talked about apples to apples. With price per square foot, you're no longer looking at sale price, you're looking at price per foot. and I'll go, highest to lowest. And then I start looking at those. And what I'm looking for is there's usually a few outliers that went like way high for who knows what reason. And then you're going to find a cluster of like 175 a foot, 174 a foot, 180 a foot, 181 a foot. And you're going to find a cluster. And I'm like, okay, this market by and large, most of the comps are at about 175 a foot. There's my, multiply that by my square footage. There's my ARV in 30 seconds. Like
I think that's really smart. I never do it that way. Here's what the reason why I've done it a little differently is I've always noticed that smaller homes sell for a much higher price per square foot than a larger home, right? So if I've got 1,000 square foot house, and I look at the dollar per square foot of a finished product, right? It might be 200, let's just say $250 a foot. But then I go in the same subdivision and I have a 2,000 square foot house. The price per foot's like $50 less a foot. Yeah. And so it diminishes the bigger you get. So I've always been wary. And the only time I'll ever use price per square foot is if my properties are within 200 square feet of each other, subject to comp. Is that about the same kind of?
Yeah. So it doesn't work well if you're, here's where you get into trouble with price per square foot. If you're, let's say your subject property is like 1,100 square feet, and you're looking at 800 to 1,500 as your parameter square foot, you're going to see some pretty big spreads, right? Because the $900 a foot one might sell at the same price as an 1,100 square foot because it's also a 3-bedroom or whatever. But now the price per foot goes way up because it's, you're dealing with a small
property. Yeah.
Yes, property. Yeah. So you do want to make sure you've got tight parameters on your per foot if you're doing it that way. Now it's way less as you go up. So if you're looking at like 2,500 square foot homes, like somewhere around there, it works really well because now you're going to go 200 feet either way or 300 feet either way. And you're going to get a much better consistent trend. But, it's not perfect, but definitely when you're doing the lower square footages, that is a little trickier. I don't know if there's a better way to do that. Maybe you go back to price, but I love that because it allows me to see very quickly where we're at in a market.
Makes total sense. While Bobby is getting those questions ready, I want to ask you one final thing, and this happens a lot. What about the largest house in a neighborhood?
Oh yeah, I've gotten burned doing this one.
Ooh, this one, guys, this one will paint you into a corner, and you're not getting out of it. So you got the largest.
I did a deal in Hilton Head. And it was 4,000 square feet. I bought it to flip. And I made the mistake of using 2,000 square foot homes for comps. And what I did is I took the price per square foot of homes that were 2,000 square feet. And I said, well, if 2,000 square feet is selling for $200 a foot, so will 4,000 square feet. And there were no 4,000 square foot homes. So I was just out of the market. Like there was no market for 4,000 square foot homes. And I lost a ton of money on the deal because when I put it up for sale, no one was going to pay that price.
Yep.
And I quickly learned that, dude, if you're an outlier, like if you're looking at your house, if you put your filters in and all the comps disappear because there are none at that square footage, be alarmed. That's something to be concerned about because you're not looking at like properties anymore.
Yep. Absolutely. Same thing has happened to me in the past too, where I did the same. I made the same mistake. I bought a house to flip. It was, about 1,000 square feet larger. Now, here's what I found out because I asked the question to appraisers because I wanted to know what they would do. Now, what they will do is they'll take the highest sale. Okay. So let's just say, for instance, in Jerry's instance, right? He had a 4,000 square foot house and all the others were 2,000 square feet. So what they'll do is they'll take the highest sale at 2,000 square feet. And they'll use that, and then they will give you a little bit. Now, here's what the little bit is. The little bit is if you're under 500 grand, they give you 10,000. If you're over 500 grand, they give you 10%. But that's the most that they're going to give you in addition.
Wow.
So think about that. For Jerry, what was the price point of that house, Jerry?
I think it was 200. It was a while ago. So I think it was going with $200 a foot.
Okay, so $200. So he's $800,000, right? Yeah. He's $800,000 exit on this thing, which means that if the highest sale in that area for the 2,000 square footers were 400 grand, Jerry's trying to sell for 800 grand. What did you end up selling it for? Around 5?
Yeah. So I sold it for more. Yeah.
Okay.
But around 5. Yeah.
Around 5. So that's it. That's all the appraiser is going to give them. That's all the market is going to give them. See how that works, guys? So comping is absolutely imperative to.
How do you handle, Jamil? I got a question for you. I'd love to hear how you handle this. How do you handle basements that are finished, but they're in a market where they don't count it as full square footage, but they do count it? How do you deal with that?
So they give you half value.
Okay. Good.
So and that's if the appraiser gives you value, right? So legally, guys, the way that an appraiser reports square footage is above grade.
Yeah.
They won't and they can't use below grade square footage in the tax record, in the actual reported square footage of a home. It's only above grade. Now,
what if it has egress windows?
I don't know. Maybe they might let you, but from what I have understood, if it is finished to the standards of the top floor, they'll give you 50%. So with egress, I would imagine they'll give you half of the value. So like, let's just say you got 1,000 square foot basement with egress windows. They'll give you 500 square feet of value for that, as long as it's finished to the same quality standard as the upper floor, which then begs the question, is there an ROI on developing a basement?
Yeah.
If it's going to cost you what it's going to cost you to fix upstairs, downstairs, but they're only going to give you half of the value, why develop the basement? Right?
Sometimes you can do it pretty cheap. Like what we'll do in Michigan is it's just open, and we'll just wall it, and we'll make it a big man cave, and it doesn't cost much to do, some drywall and some, ceilings and some lights and stuff. So like, if it costs you $25 a foot, but you're getting $50 a foot, maybe it makes sense.
Yeah.
You gotta pencil it. Like you gotta pay attention.
Absolutely. We're going to get to the questions here now, guys. I'm sorry. I don't know if we still have Bobby with me or Natasha. If you can find questions on the, hey, how you doing, brother?
You've been waiting for me to put something on screen. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
I have a bunch starred here. So we can start here. Ready?
There he is. All right. Khalil Perry asked,
I got one of these.
How do you comp a house with an in-ground pool that needs to be filled? Do buyers stay away from that? Great question.
I have one right now in Michigan that's a rehab, and I've done a bunch of them, and we are filling in the pool. And what we're doing there is we jackhammer the floor so that it drains, and then we push the edges and everything into the hole, bring dirt in, compact it, and and so that's going to cost. It depends if you can get back there. Like sometimes it's hard to get equipment, and you got to get small equipment, things like that. But we spend usually anywhere from $8 to $10 grand to do that. And now, why would you do that? We do that in markets where a pool isn't really a benefit. So in Michigan, a pool is more of a liability than it is a benefit.
Absolutely.
Because your summer season is so short, and most buyers don't want a pool. They don't want to maintain it. So it actually hurts you in a lot of markets. That's one reason. Or the cost to fix that pool is just astronomical, and you're better off just spending the money to get rid of it. Right.
Absolutely.
So that's a cost thing. But how do you comp it? The comping it, if you're in a market with pools, you definitely need to understand how the pool impacts that market.
Yeah.
Like
and so in this one, Jerry, you had to take value off, right? Because you had to fill that pool in. And so Khalil, I think the answer is if the market has pools, then you have to make the adjustment down if you have to fill in the pool. If the market doesn't have pools, then you have to, again, mitigate for the cost of filling that pool because there's no value in actually keeping the pool there. So something to definitely think about. Now, this made me think about solar, Jerry. How are you dealing with solar on properties, non-owned solar, leased solar? What does that do to the value, the saleability, and how you're making offers and valuing property?
Well, so here in Puerto Rico, when we rehab, solar is a big budget item. So here's how we do it here. Because power goes out all the time in Puerto Rico, and you have hurricanes to worry about. So buyers at certain price points, now this isn't all price points, but the price points I play in, backup power is a big deal. So what we do is we put in the Tesla battery, and that gives you about a day's worth of backup. You get about 8 hours of backup with just that wall, I'm talking about the wall unit. And then we get bids for the solar, and everybody's different on their solar. Maybe they want more or less, maybe they want full regenerating with cells and all that. What we do is we get bids on that, and then we provide them to our buyer, knowing that the buyer at least wants the basic, day backup package. And that costs about 13 grand. I just put a deposit down on one today, about 13 grand for at least here anyway, for that. But in your high sun states and stuff, like you're seeing a lot of solar. We're dealing with it on the buy side where people have these loans. This is nuts, like 25-year loans.
I know.
And it's like, what, for like a $50,000 loan for 25 years. And it's like, dude, why did you do that? That makes no sense at all. You just hurt yourself because now we have to factor that in or take over that payment or whatever. But you're seeing it a lot now.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, when you're looking at solar, what I found is that if it's not owned, so if it's still leased, okay, it's actually a negative. It's a negative because what ends up happening is that payment, 300, 250, that now gets added into the total DTI. And it makes the person who's qualifying for that end product qualify for less because that payment is going to be factored into the total debt to income ratio. And so it's
because when they actually sell, it passes on to the new buyer.
Yep. And they got to qualify for that. It's not just a straight, assume my lease. No, that person's got to go and qualify to take over the lease, just like they would have qualified when the first person bought it, which makes so many buyers just get brain damage. And they're like, I don't want to do this. Like, what a pain in the rear this is.
Yeah.
So pay attention to that. Solar is a plus in some, but can in most price points, if it's still leased, it actually can make your property worth less. Charlotte has a great question. How would you comp a mobile home park?
Well, let me answer that a little bit differently. We have a deal right now in Florida, and it's a mobile home. And when we first looked at it, I was like, no way. It's got the 410 roof, But then I took a closer look, and I'm like, well, wait a second. This is on a foundation, so now it's attached to a foundation, and now that is real estate, right? Because it's not on a trailer that you can drive away.
Yep,
it's a fixed, and we found lots of comps. So there was a lot of that going on in the neighborhood. So I only comped it against other fixed mobile home or I guess manufactured homes like ours. So I made very clear, I was very careful not to miscomp it against regular houses. Even though it's a fixed, it's still a manufactured home, and a buyer's going to look at it that way, and an appraiser is going to look at it that way. So I was able to establish value, but only by looking at other manufactured homes. And that, I think that might be the point, is make sure you're looking at other similar homes. Now, a park, I don't know if that's really your question, Charlotte. A park would be, there's 100 of them and you're going to buy the whole park. Is that the question?
I think that is. And Charlotte, the answer to that would be NOI, net operating income.
Yeah.
So you're going to comp this like you would any commercial deal. In fact, I'm about to release a how to comp commercial series with Hannah Hammond. If you guys didn't watch that YouTube video that I did with her, she's a juggernaut in the world of commercial real estate. And there's a lot of opportunities to wholesale commercial property, but really understanding how to comp it and what cap rate makes a good deal and what cap rate makes a bad deal is really important. So if you guys haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, go do it. We're going to teach you how to comp commercial. But Charlotte, when you comp commercial, it's all based on the net operating income and the cap rate. So what you want to find out is, what is a good cap rate for a mobile home park in that market? What is the average cap rate? So if the average cap rate for a fully rented, fully stabilized, well-managed mobile home park is an 8 cap. Well, if you're buying it, you want to make sure you're getting it at a much greater price than that. So you want to be probably buying it somewhere at 10 or an 11, so that you have the available cushion to do the improvements, to put new management in, to, make the T12 make more sense. So net operating income is really important when you are valuing commercial property of any type, a mobile home park being one of those types.
And think about it, guys. The reason why is because a buyer, an investor, they're buying that for the income it produces, not for other homes or other properties that have a similar value. The value now is based differently. It's based on the income it produces, not on what you can resell it for. And that's why commercial looks at income, net operating income, not other comps.
Absolutely. And Anything Goes said, yes, for buy price, you want to take your NOI divided by the cap rate. But we'll get into that in great detail when we are looking at how to comp commercial properties. Brandon Martin's question, how do you comp multifamily 5 units or more? Brandon, same answer.
Same thing.
It's going to be on net operating income. Now, if it's 4 units or less, how would you comp that, Jerry?
Well, so 4 units or less, they will treat that as single family under the appraisal and lending guidelines.
Correct. And so you would want to comp it with another fourplex or triplex or duplex. So don't take your quadplex and comp it to a single family. That's not going to work. You can't take your single family times it by 4, and that's what a fourplex would be worth. It's not that simple.
And you're still going to look at income even on a 4 unit because income is going to matter. Yeah. But they'll actually appraise it against other 4 units.
Correct. Now, just back on the manufactured home, there's a year built that really changes the value of a manufactured home based on lending guidelines and whether or not lenders will lend. Pre-1976, Jerry, do you pay it? Are you ever buying manufactured homes built before 1976?
I don't do a lot of manufactured homes. I mean, if I can wholesale one, but I'm not really buying those.
So why it's important to look at the year build, even if it's a fixed on manufactured home, is across the country, lenders will not lend on any manufactured home built prior to 1976. Why? I don't know. But they won't lend on it, which means what? That the end buyer is going to have to come in with all cash. Now, let me ask you a question. If you're buying a manufactured home to live in, what are the chances that you have the entire purchase price in cash?
Very low, which is why most of the parks that have pre-1976, they finance those manufactured.
They do. They'll do seller finance in those circumstances, but that's why they do it. And you have to pay attention. Now, if you're making an offer on a pre-1976 manufactured home, you can come in and offer substantially less than you would offer on a post-1976 manufactured home, because again, the demand for that is much less. And so you can actually get that at typically half of what you would have paid for a 1976 or newer manufactured home. So knowing these guidelines and knowing these rules, guys, will help you in your offers, and it'll help you in your saleability. How did I learn this? Well, I got a manufactured home that was 1975 built, and I had a comp right next door that was 1978, a pretty much model match, and I had a huge spread, and nobody wanted to buy it. And I couldn't understand what was going on. And finally, somebody sat me down and said, "Hey, Jamil, I can't even get a hard money loan on this manufactured home that was built in 1975. No, lenders won't lend on it. It's just the rule. So everybody's got to come in cash, which means if I sell this, I'm not selling this to an end user. I'm selling it to an investor who wants to rent it. And then I'm not going to get top dollar for it, because investors don't pay top dollar for anything, right? They're going to want a discount.
And a lot of times the shipping fee for that thing to move it around is more than the value of the thing itself.
Very true. Freddie Hardy said, how do I comp land for a housing development 10 to 20 acres where you have to put in roads and utilities? So Freddie, we just went over that earlier on in the podcast. I said, if you're looking for what houses sell for nearby, now the developments have to be right there. They can't be like 5 minutes down the road, 10 minutes down the road, because that's not ready to develop land yet. The developments have to be right there. You have to be butting up to the developments that are currently existing. And if you are butting up to the developments that are currently existing, usually you look at what are those units selling for. Let's just say 400,000. You want to pay about 10%. And then you're going to have to do the math based on the acreages and on the acreage and what the zoning will permit you to divide each of those per acre. You can rewind this episode and hear me break it down in greater detail, Freddie, but that's how you will comp that. Hunty asked, help. When coming to an agreement on market, does the seller agent put down my due diligence days in the agreement for my boots on the ground since I write? Oh my goodness. Jerry, I think this is written in Puerto Rican English. Can you make sense? I'm just playing, Hunty. When coming to an agreement on market, does the seller put my due diligence days down in the agreement for my boots on the ground since I don't write the agreement?
Yeah. Okay. I think I understand this question here. When you're on market, it is true that the agent's going to write the offer using their state approved contract, but that doesn't mean you don't have to give that agent a lot of direction as to what you want included in that offer, in that contract. So like I have a 10-point checklist, which I give every single agent every single time, that they got to have all these things in that offer. Now I'm asking the agent to put these things in there because I'm not the one writing the offer, the agent is. So you got to manage that well, because if they don't help you do that right, then you're going to have a contract that maybe isn't very wholesaler friendly and you're going to have a problem. So you want to be able to, you have to tell that agent what you want in your contract.
Love it. Jerry, we went through this hour and a half faster than I can't even believe it's been 90 minutes. It feels like it's been 5 minutes.
It was like 5 minutes. Wow.
What do you have coming down the pipe?
I can't say about that one. With someone I really like a lot, spending some time with tomorrow.
Yes.
His name starts with a J.
Yes.
I'm going to be hanging out with Brent too a little bit on live. We're doing. I'm excited about that.
Amazing.
And then I fly out a week from today, flying out to Orlando. So super excited to go to the Squad Up Summit. I can't wait. I'm so excited. And I know how hard you guys have worked, Jamil. Like I talked to Pace a little bit and you a little bit about it, and I think you guys are absolutely nuts. Like to put this on, people have no idea what it takes to put on something like this. No idea.
No clue.
Like you guys should, if you guys go, if you don't go for one, like, dude, you're missing out, because not very many people can even pull this off, let alone finance it.
Right. Right.
So it's a big deal to go to something like this.
It really is. And we're really excited, Jerry. And, seeing that you're going to be on stage with us at that event was probably you're my favorite speaker on that, next to Pace. You two are my two favorite people in the entire world. I like Grant Cardone. He's awesome. I like Donald Miller. He's awesome. I love Vina Jeddah. She's amazing. But there's only one Jerry Norton. And it's going to be so incredible to get to hear you, get to see you. And for all of you who have not yet met Jerry or me or Pace or Don or Grant or Vina, make sure you come to Squad Up Summit. Guys, I am really close to 50,000 subs. I know I got a baby channel compared to Mr. Norton over here. But what I'm doing for my 50,000, when I hit 50,000 subscribers, and I'm almost there, I'm going to be giving away an hour of my time where I just come in and break down your business. I'm going to pick one of the subscribers who comes in, and I'm going to sit down with you on a Zoom, and you're going to tell me all of your business problems, and I'm going to help you solve them if I can. And I'll dive into it with you. So we can talk mindset, we can talk scale, we can talk systems, we can talk strategy, whatever you want. And so what I'll be doing is I'll be picking a lucky subscriber. So if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, do that. If you haven't yet subscribed to Jerry's channel and you're watching from a different one, go do that. But other than that, guys, we'll see you all at Squad Up Summit or next Monday on Wholesale Hotline.
Thank you, everybody.
Or just say squat up.
So squat up and enjoy the show.
Yeah.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
So squat up and enjoy the show.
What are you doing?
I didn't say that thing.
Why?
I don't know. I
Okay.
forgot. So squat up and enjoy the show.
Cool. I think we should use the one where Jamil doesn't say anything.